Dr. Carl Hart is a neuroscientist, associate professor of psychology and psychiatry at Columbia University, and an expert on drug addiction. And he gave a great TED talk about the issue of drug addiction recently. So let me play you a small segment here, and then I want to tell you more about his findings.
I was unprepared for what I would learn as I went about making my contribution to the study of the neurobiology of drug addiction. And ultimately, this new information that I learned changed how I viewed the role of drugs in the whole poverty crime cycle. I first began questioning my thinking when I discovered that drugs like crack cocaine were not as addictive as we had been told. There is no drug in which the user uses one time and becomes addicted. In fact, 80 to 90% of the people who use illegal drugs are not addicts. They don't have a drug problem. I think I need to say that again. 80 to 90% of the people who use illegal drugs don't have a drug problem. Most are responsible members of our society. They are employed. They pay their taxes. They take care of their families. And in some cases, they even become president of the United States.
That point right there, I almost did a standing ovation in my living room when I heard him say it, because this is a point that I've been making for the longest time, and nobody fucking listens to me because I'm just a YouTube jack-off. Okay, but it's true, and he has the research to back it up. This guy's a neuroscientist, and it's his specialty. And what did he just say? I'm going to repeat it. 80% to 90% of all drug users, of all different drugs, are not addicts. Now, doesn't that fly directly in the face of what you've heard your entire life? Because what's the standard understanding? We've gotten to the point now where people kind of understand that, well, marijuana is not all that bad. It should more be categorized along with the legal drugs. But, oh, cocaine or crack, or, oh, the people with pill addictions, oh, that's terrible, oh, that's the worst, that's horrific. But he's telling you right there, even a drug like crack cocaine, okay, you don't get addicted the first time, and 80 to 90% of drug users they can function normally, they can pay their bills, they can do their thing. Thank you, Dr. Carl Hart, because this is one of those issues where when I keep talking, the more I talk about it, the more people fucking tune out. And look, maybe part of that is rightfully so, because that's not necessarily my field of expertise. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a neuroscientist. I have a political science degree, but I'm a fucking political commentator. So why should you trust me any more than you should trust anybody else that does what I do, right? And I don't know, would you trust Mark Levin, the conservative radio host, giving you advice on drugs? Probably not. So I get that there's a healthy amount of skepticism, and there should be. But here we have a neuroscientist who's finally backing up what I've been saying for the longest time. Quote, Hart said growing up as he did, he came to believe the prevailing assertion that crack cocaine and other drugs were the villains behind crime and poverty. If he could only solve the addiction problem, he thought, he'd be tackling the root of the problem. As Hart came to learn, that is not the reality. He says poverty and crime were around long before crack and other drugs appeared on the scene, and the forces at play that kept poor communities poor are insidious and systemic. He says, quote, my family, we were poor before drugs entered the picture. I engaged in petty crime, but it had nothing to do with drug addiction. It was about money and status. If you take drugs out of the equation, poverty and crime still exist. It's not drug addiction causing people to commit crime. It's other factors. So, his studies have demonstrated that people who take a variety of different drugs make, quote, surprisingly rational decisions. I'm not kidding. Quote, Certainly, we have given thousands of doses of crack cocaine and methamphetamine to people in our lab and never had any problems with violence or anything like that. That tells you it's not the pharmacology of the drug, but some interaction with the environment or environmental conditions that would probably happen without the drug. So, in other words, drugs are the scapegoat that we use to blame people for their problems and poverty. There you have it. Again, this is what I've been saying for the longest time. How can you blame a drug? What does a drug do? Stop and think about what a drug does. First of all, I bet most of you have taken drugs today. Did you have a Red Bull at some point? Did you have a Monster Energy? Did you have a 5-hour energy? Did you have a cup of coffee? Did you have a cigarette? Did you have a beer? Did you have some wine? Did you have a glass of whiskey? What'd you have? What's your pleasure? What did you have? Did you have a Xanax when you came home because you were a little bit stressed? Those are all drugs. And if somebody were to talk to you, hey man, you got a problem with that? You'd be like, what? Fuck off, man. What are you talking about? I just took a Xanax. I had a little bit of anxiety. Now I'm perfectly fine. Go fuck off. Who are you? What are you saying? Who are you to say stuff like this to me? It's the same thing with the illegal drugs. This is what I'm trying to get into people's heads. That same mentality that you have when you look at somebody drinking a double shot espresso, that's the same mentality you have to have when you look at somebody who's like, you know what I want to do today? I'm going to go have some LSD. I'm going to, tonight, it's a Friday night, I'm going to watch Mrs. Doubtfire, and then I'm going to have some LSD and just trip out a little bit. Like, okay, just not going to fucking make society fall. What drugs do, obviously it depends on which drug you're talking about and what kind of drug it is. Is it an upper? Is it a downer? Is it a psychedelic? Whatever, right? But what they do, drugs just essentially change your brain chemical structure temporarily. Okay, so if you take, an opiate or an opioid, okay, well, you get a little burst of oxytocin and your receptors act a certain way and you feel happy. Okay, if you take Adderall or cocaine, okay, you just took an upper, you're going to get a dopamine rush, norepinephrine rush, and certain things happen. Okay, you took a Xanax pill, your GABA receptors act a certain way, and you feel very calm. So all these drugs, all that you're doing is giving yourself a temporary feeling. Now, the problem is like 10%, maybe 20%, like he said, of people, they don't have the off switch. So once they start, they can't stop. They take one pill, they think they need to take 15. And then, of course, they could overdose and die. But that's no different than people with alcohol. And we never question whether or not alcohol should be illegal, right? Because we tried that once and it was a fucking disaster. We all understand that it's part and parcel of this thing called, what is it again? Freedom, that, well, some people are just going to be alcoholics and they're going to take it too far and some lives are going to be ruined and some drunk driving accidents are going to happen, but we're going to guard against that stuff as much as we can because we believe in the freedom to take a substance if you choose to take a substance. I'm not going to stop you from having a Merlot on a Saturday with your buddy at a restaurant because some guy in Cleveland couldn't control his stuff and he ruined his life with alcohol. Okay, that same mentality needs to be taken with all the other drugs. And Dr. Carl Hart is laying out in the perfect way right here that the drugs are not the root of the problem. They're not even a problem. It's just a substance like any other substance, okay? Most people can use moderately. Don't punish everybody because some people can't handle it. And let's get over this and attack the real problems, which is systemic poverty.